What's happening? Happy hump day to you and yours. Thanks for joining me as always on this Wednesday afternoon. Couple of things to take care of before we get down to business. Number one, this takes a second of your time, doesn't cost you anything. Don't forget to give us that like if you're watching on YouTube. Just hit that thumbs up, like, comment, throw a comment in. Lots of comments on yesterday's podcast that we did on the offensive line, and Drake Maye went through what I saw at joint practice. So you can always throw a comment in there. That helps. And subscribe to the channel. So like, comment, subscribe. Spotify, Apple Pods. Those listeners can rate and review the show. That's how you support this program. You can also support us, obviously, via Super Chat. Now, here's one thing I want to mention before we start today's podcast is I've got new content coming your way. Now, I know you're a Patriots fan, but that likely means you are also an NFL fan. So I have a new podcast coming your way 3 weeks from tomorrow night. So 3 weeks from tomorrow night, every Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern time, it's going to be a new podcast called Crafts and Kickoffs. The idea is rather simple. I pull one of my favorite craft beers from the fridge here at the house. I crack that puppy open. I pour myself a cold one. We sit down, we shoot back and forth about the top 5 storylines in the NFL that week. So sit back, have a favorite craft beer, have a favorite beverage of your choosing. Every Thursday night, starting 3 weeks from tomorrow night, obviously that's Thursday, September 5th, which is the official kickoff of the NFL season. It will be happening on this channel. So if you subscribe to the Nick Cattles Show, if you subscribe to the Nick Cattles channel, you will get Crafts and Kickoffs every Thursday night live at 7 p.m. Eastern, where we talk about the top 5 storylines of the NFL week as we enjoy our favorite beverage. All right, that's out of the way. Let's look at the Patriots now. I figured it'd be a perfect podcast to talk about some of the things I would love to see the Patriots change offensively, if it's not for tomorrow night, at least in the next week or so. And you know, I vented my frustrations yesterday, right? I got the frustrations out of the way. That's done. Back burner. Now I want to move forward. And I want to let you know what I want to see moving forward from this football team and offensively, especially from this football team. The first thing I will say, we talked about the offensive line, and the offensive line yesterday was atrocious. I'm not ready to write off the offensive line completely. I'm not here to tell you this is going to be as bad as 2023. You go back to right before that Carolina game last week, and we talked about the O-line. The top O-line had actually done a pretty decent job at practice, and they looked like they were much, much better than 2023. Then the Carolina game happened, took a step back. Then yesterday's joint practice happened, which was atrocious, took a big step back. Now it's up to this team, up to the coaching staff, up to the offensive line to take a step forward tomorrow night against the Philadelphia Eagles in preseason game number 2. Here's what I would love to see. I would love to see the Patriots give Caden Wallace, their young rookie from Penn State, at least a few reps on the top offensive line. I would like to see them try to move Wallace to left tackle and see how that goes. He got some snaps at left tackle. It wasn't a complete disaster. He has a very good athletic profile for the tackle position. So I think it's time where you might swing Wallace to left tackle, at least as part of a rotation, to try to get this offensive line going and see if Wallace can outwork Vidarian Lowe. Because Vidarian Lowe has not done a good enough job, especially in this last week, to hold on to the position. Chuks Okorafor, I let Thursday night slide against Carolina because he was out 3 or 4 practices in a row before that game. Chuks was not great yesterday. He needs a big night tomorrow night. But Chuks and Lowe, they have not nailed down the tackle positions. So I would at least rotate a few times to see if Caden Wallace can do a decent enough job at left tackle for you. I have some other offensive line thoughts, but first let me go to Maryland T with the Super Chat, $25 Super Chat. I'll sponsor the first brewskis for the new pod. Happy birthday, Nick. Thank you, Maryland. I appreciate you. You're an OG. You've been with the show from almost day one, if not day one. So thank you so much for the $25 Super Chat, the birthday wishes, and I guess funding the first Crafts and Kickoffs episode coming 3 weeks from tomorrow night as we talk top storylines in the NFL on a Thursday night. I appreciate you, Marilyn, for all that you have done for this podcast. JB Brown jumps in. He has a super chat. Love the new pod idea. Starting my own on mergers and acquisitions. Nice. Well, if you need any advice or any suggestions or anything about this way of life, JB, reach out, man. You know how you can get me on that Patreon page. Message me, and I will give you all the advice that I can. I always love guys and women who are trying to grind within this business and work their butt off. So let me know how that goes. Offensive line, woof. Do they have an NFL LT on the roster? Anyone signable? Well, here's the thing why I would try Wallace there at left tackle first. He did show some glimpses of promise early in camp, so I think that is something you have to think about and circle back to. I would also say that as far as guys that are out there, even the Donovan Smiths of the world, he took a big step back last year. You know, I heard Alex Barr talk about this recently. Smith took a big step back last year. If he takes a similar step back this year, he might not even be playable. You have another couple of guys out there in Humphreys and Leno who went through some major surgeries, so we don't know how healthy those guys are. My general rule is this. If somebody is still out there in free agency, especially when you talk about tackle, there's a reason for that. And usually those reasons or the reason is not a great reason. If these guys were seen as valuable pieces that you can throw onto a roster at this point, they would have already been signed. They would be in a camp. So I don't know if there's any lifeline out there, so to speak, for you in free agency. That's why I would try Wallace at left tackle. And then the other thing I would do, I would start to put Layden Robinson out there as part of the starting offensive line. Again, I would start rotating some of these guys. I would not make a wholesale change, but I would start a rotation. I would throw Wallace at left tackle to see if he can win some reps and get some momentum. And I would not hate the idea of playing Layden Robinson at guard and entertain putting Mike Onwenu back at right tackle, which was the initial plan. That's what we thought was going to happen, right? And I love Onwenu at guard. He's been a monster this camp for the most part. He wasn't as dominating yesterday during the joint practice, but we know that Mike Onwenu is an NFL-level tackle. He might not be great, but he is at least good. So maybe you put Layden Robinson at right guard, or you can swing to right guard, put Robinson left guard. Robinson's had a good camp, and he was good last week against Carolina. And he had a decent day, all things considered, yesterday against the Eagles. So the two options that I think you have right now, because Calvin Anderson has not been good. He was awful yesterday. So I think the two options right now in-house is you try Caden Wallace at left tackle. You could also slide Onwenu back to right tackle and put Layden Robinson in there at guard. Those are the two things. I would like to see at least a rotation. I would like to get Robinson involved at guard on the top offensive line, and I would like to get Caden Wallace involved at left tackle with the top offensive line. And I know that means more juggling, but after what I saw yesterday, I think juggling is necessary to make sure that you have the top 5 offensive linemen for week 1. The third thing I like to see, the third change I would like to see this Patriots offense, whether it happens tomorrow night or right after tomorrow night, because it might be too quick of a turnaround to, make these changes happen just 48 hours after the joint practice. Jalen Polk needs more run. And I don't think any of these ideas are necessarily unique. I think many of us watching this team who know football, we see a lot of the same problems. I said this yesterday on the podcast. The wide receiver position at yesterday's practice was pretty quiet. Not a lot happening. Pop Douglas made some plays, not a shocker. But really, the only other guy that was out there that was steady throughout the entirety of the practice was Austin Hooper, who was open a decent amount. I don't think Jalen Polk is getting enough opportunity. I don't think he got enough opportunity yesterday. I think he has been the second best receiver in camp. In totality, when you look at everything, KJ Osborne started to make a little bit of a charge. He's kind of gone back, right? Tyquan Thornton started off camp very well. He has fallen back. The only thing he did yesterday was drop a pass that hit him right in the midst. So you start to look at all these other guys. Kayshon Boutte. He is, I show flashes and then I don't show much. We saw that against Carolina last week in the preseason game. He starts off the first half with 2 great catches. You're going, man, Kayshon Boutte's popping here, right? The booty is popping. And then in the second half, he has 2 bad drops. That's really been Kayshon Boutte. He shows you flashes of brilliance, and you go, man, he could be good. And then he just can't get out of his own way. We remember last year, he started on this roster, Philadelphia, week 1. He can't keep his feet in bounds. So there's been a lot of inconsistency. For me, Jalen Polk, consistently, Polk has been the second best receiver in this camp after Pop Douglas. Jalen Polk deserves more run. He deserves more opportunities. He looks like he belongs. Get him on the field. Enough with the BS. Fourth, please, for the love of God and all that is holy, play Drake Maye with the ones. And play him with the ones tomorrow night for more than one series. I want to see the starting offensive line out there. I want to see Jalen Polk out there as well. And I want Drake Maye to play at least 2, if not 3 series with the starting offensive line. Give him an opportunity. Give him a chance to develop, to progress, to not worry about the bleep show in front of him. So please play Drake Maye at least 2 or 3 series with that top offensive line tomorrow night. I'm begging you, Gerard Mayo. I'm begging you, Alex Van Pelt. Give Maye a chance. I don't know what he is right now. I don't know if he's far behind. I don't know if he's behind. I don't know if he's where he should be. I have no clue, because from what we have seen and from what I have seen with my own eyes at practice, especially yesterday, is a quarterback that you can't evaluate because it's a mess in front of him. So stop the madness. Please play Drake Maye tomorrow night, 2 to 3 series with that top offensive line, and please play him for at least a quarter, if not a quarter and a half, in tomorrow night's game. He needs the reps. He needs the experience behind that top offensive line, and he needs an opportunity to get a little bit of momentum before this season kicks off, even if he's not going to play quarterback for the year. I don't care. Get him out there. Get him behind the top offensive line. Get him receivers that could actually catch the football and see what the young man can do. I'm begging you, please do that. Final thing before I get to a preview of tomorrow night's game. Alex Van Pelt, you have to make sure that this offensive line is playing disciplined football. Enough is enough. I don't know if you've got to yell at them more. I don't know if you have to allow them to go meditate before a game, a la J.J. McCarthy. I don't know what you've got to do, but figure it out. Your offensive line pre-snap penalties are getting ridiculous. You had too many against Carolina last week. You had way too many yesterday during the joint practice. I don't want to see it tomorrow night. I don't want to see false starts. I don't want to see delay of games. I don't want to see sloppiness. Get your operation intact. Please, Alex Van Pelt. All right, before we preview tomorrow night's game, some questions that I have. Don't forget to give us that thumbs up. If you are watching on YouTube, you click that thumbs up. Give us a like. Also, if you want to give us a like on Twitter, Facebook, you can do that as well. A lot of different things that you can do. Like, comment. Comments mean an awful lot. You know, when people throw comments into the YouTube, the algorithm kind of pops. And it shows this product to other people. It shows the content to people who might not be getting it on a daily basis. So like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're listening on Spotify and Apple Pods, rate and review. All right, some questions, some thoughts about tomorrow night's game before we get into it. How much will the ones play? How much will the starting offensive line be out there? Are they going to have a series? Are they going to have 2 series? Are they going to play a quarter? Are they going to play a half? We don't really know. Usually you have 2 joint practices, and then the preseason game, the ones don't play. Well, we had 1 joint practice this time around. Does that mean that Sirianni and Gerard Mayo are going to play their ones more than we've seen in prior years after these joint practices? I don't know. I have no clue. I want to see how much the ones will play tomorrow night. Will they be out there a decent amount? I just covered this, but will Drake Maye get any snaps with the starting offensive line? He got a series last week. I don't think it was enough. Will we see Drake Maye out there with the starting offensive line for 2, 3, maybe even 4 series? 4 probably a little bit crazy, but at least a couple of series, if not 3, with that top offensive line. Will Jacoby Brissett play? That obviously will impact the playing time of Maye. It will also impact who Maye plays with. You know, one of my major issues about the game last week against Carolina was not the decision to pull Maye with the offensive line. I actually agreed with that because of the 5-alarm fire that we saw with the backup offensive line yesterday. The backup offensive line has been god-awful. And my issue last week, you go back to that Thursday night game against Carolina, it wasn't the idea of we don't want to play Maye with the backup offensive line. My argument was, why do you play Brissett? If you know your top offensive line is only going to play 2 series, if you're only going to play those guys for 2 series, why not start Drake Maye? Start Maye and have him play both series with the starters. So A, Drake Maye can feel like a starting quarterback again, and maybe that gets him into a little bit of a rhythm. Maybe that helps his confidence. And B, he gets 2 series with the starting offensive line and the starting receivers and tight ends, which he has not been really given a great opportunity to work with those guys. And C, what are you really gaining by playing Jacoby Brissett last week for the first series? It was nonsensical to me. So I want that to be changed. I'm not worried about playing Jacoby Brissett tomorrow night. He played a ton of snaps yesterday against the starting Eagles defense. And if you do play Brissett, play him 1 series, get him out of there, and make sure Maye plays at least 2 series with the starting offensive line. That's what I would do. I would go into tomorrow night thinking either Brissett for 1 series, because he's not going to play in the 3rd preseason game, and play Drake Maye at least 2 series with the starting offensive line. Or I wouldn't play Brissett. I'd start Drake Maye, and I'd have him go the first quarter with the starters and see what you have in your rookie quarterback. How much will the defensive ones play for Philadelphia? This is interesting to me. You can play your ones. The Patriots can go out there and they can play their starting offensive line. They can play their starting receivers and tight ends. Hunter Henry missed the joint practice yesterday. I would imagine we will not see Hunter Henry tomorrow night. Could be wrong. I didn't think we'd see Chooks last week. Maybe Hunter's out there tomorrow night. But you could play your ones while Philadelphia doesn't. Now, Vic Fangio, new defensive coordinator for Philadelphia. He has talked about playing the ones a lot in the preseason. So going off of what Fangio has said, we should expect the Eagles starters on defense to get at least 1 series, if not 2. But I don't know. Maybe Fangio changes his mind. Maybe after watching the joint practice yesterday, he says to himself, all right, we dominated. There's no need to play these guys on Thursday night because I don't want to worry about injuries or any of that other stuff, right? So here's another question as to the Drake Maye handling. If the Eagles starters don't play tomorrow night, if the starting defense for Philly doesn't play tomorrow night, then that means Drake Maye got 1 series. Not even. Scratch that. Against Carolina, Carolina didn't even start their guys, right? So if Philadelphia doesn't play their starting defense tomorrow night in the first quarter, that means you went through the first 2 preseason games and the joint practice without Drake Maye playing against a number 1 defense. And this all goes into development. I couldn't care less if Drake Maye doesn't start until week 9, week 10, week 15. I don't even really care if Drake Maye doesn't start at all. If you tell me this year it's best for him to sit, learn, and develop, I'm fine with it. I'm fine with a long-term plan. We talked about it on draft night. Drafting Drake Maye was all about 2025 and the future. It was not about 2024. My issue is with the development plan. You have to get him opportunities with the starters. You have to get him opportunities against the starting defense. He's not going against the starting defense of his own team at these practices that we've seen. I don't want him going through an entire preseason and an entire camp without going against a top defense, a number one defense, just to see where he is in his development. Same way I feel about getting him out there with the starting offensive line and the starting pass catchers, just to see where he is, because right now playing behind that second offensive line is telling us nothing. Going against the second or third defense is telling us nothing. We have no idea where Drake Maye is right now. No clue. The top offensive line for the Patriots, meanwhile, as we talk about those guys, they need a good night tomorrow night. If it's against the Eagles starting defense, if it's against the Philadelphia, second or third team defense, whatever it is, we need to see this offensive line, this starting offensive line. And I would anticipate the starting offensive line to be what it's been the last 7 or 8 practices. I just expect Vidarian Lowe at left tackle, Sidiso, Andrews, Owenu, and then Okorafor at right tackle. We need to see this top offensive line, the first 5 guys out there in the trenches. We need to see them have a good night tomorrow night after what we saw yesterday. And I'm not just talking about pass protection. Pass protection is easy. I'm talking about pass protection. I'm talking about run game. The run game was not good yesterday. We talked about it on the podcast. And the flags. I want to see this offensive line be able to pass protect consistently, open up a few holes in the run game, and don't have a million flags thrown on them when they're out there. This starting offensive line needs a good night tomorrow night. If they go out there and they look like a train wreck, it's a big problem, because now you go back to the Carolina game, which wasn't good for that starting offensive line. You get to the joint practice, which was atrocious, and you follow that up with a bad night tomorrow night. We're not at DEFCON 1 just yet, but we're getting closer. They have to be good tomorrow night. Take a second of your time. If you enjoy the content here, the alternative Patriots talk every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday during this camp season at 4 o'clock, don't forget to give us that thumbs up, whether you're watching on YouTube or you're watching on Twitter or Facebook. Give us that like. Comment at YouTube. Throw a comment in there. Help us out. Build the community. Build the momentum. Like, comment, subscribe, and, of course, rate and review on Spotify, Apple Pods. I want to see the operation tomorrow night look like an NFL operation. I thought Jerod Mayo had a rough first half last week. I didn't like the Drake Maye plan. I thought he completely botched the Mitchell Wilcox dropped pass challenge situation. And at least he admitted it. He admitted it a day or two later. But the Patriots needed to get to the line of scrimmage, snap that football so that they did not lose possession. They sat around. They allowed Carolina to challenge the play, and they lost possession because of it. I also thought the end of the first half management wasn't good. You had 2 timeouts, Carolina at the 11-yard line, their own 11-yard line. And instead of taking a timeout and forcing them to maybe make a mistake and get the football back and set up a scoring drive, you just let the clock run out. Preseason is all about situational football. Call a timeout. See if your defense can come up with a big third down stop with Carolina inside their own 20-yard line. And then you give your offense a chance. If you do stop them on that third down, you call a timeout and you give your offense a chance to try to score some points at the end of half. Get in the no huddle, right? Get your kicker to run out there and attempt a field goal in the final seconds. So I thought it was a rough first half for Jerod Mayo last week. I want to see him better. Get off to a better start tomorrow night. The offensive operation, we talked about the penalties, the pre-snap penalties, the sloppiness. I want to get beyond that. Clean that stuff up. Can you snap the football consistently? Clean that up. Can you get the play in, huddled up at the line of scrimmage efficiently? Some of this simple stuff. That's what I want to see. I want to see a clean operation. It's not just about the results. I want to see a clean operation tomorrow night. Way too sloppy against Carolina. Even more sloppy yesterday in that joint practice. Figure it out. Alex Van Pelt, Gerard Mayo, figure it out. Because almost all of that stuff is coming from the offensive side of the ball. Clean it up. Some other things I'm looking for tomorrow night. Who's going to play cornerback opposite of A.J. Brown? Yesterday at joint practice, what we had Christian Gonzalez defending, for the most part, Devontae Smith, and the Patriots were rotating the other corners against A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown had a great day. I'm not surprised by that. He was going against the Patriots' fourth and fifth cornerbacks. Marcus Jones was not there. Jonathan Jones was not there. If that's the same situation tomorrow night, who is playing opposite of A.J. Brown? I would imagine a rotation, but we got to keep an eye on guys like Marco Wilson, Alex Austin, Isaiah Bolden. Can those guys, Marcellus Dial, if he gets a look, those cornerbacks, the depth chart of the cornerback position, with Jonathan Jones being older and a little dinged up during camp, Marcus Jones again, not on the field. Let's see what you get out of those guys. Critical. Maybe someone shows that they're in the lead. Is it Marco Wilson? Is it somebody else? All right, I have a lot more thoughts. First, let's go to Terry. $10 super chat. I have a YouTube comment question. Is it comments during the live podcast or afterwards or both? Congrats on the new podcast. Thank you, Terry. I think it's both. I think as long as you get comments, I think if more comments are coming in and I'm pulling up the comments on the live video, YouTube throws it out to more viewers, throws it out to more people who are on YouTube during that minute, during that time. And if it's, comments after the video is done, I also think you get a little bit of a rub from that as well. They just want to see activity. They want to see engagement. That magical word, Terry, right? Engagement. And if this podcast is driving engagement, which is people clicking the like button or commenting or even subscribing, but mostly the likes and the comments, that's engagement to them, and they will throw it out there into the ether. If there's not a lot of engagement, even if the content you think is great, if you do, if it's not driving that engagement, then YouTube's not going to help us out as much. So that's why it's critical. Thank you for the super chat as always, Terry. All right, just a few final thoughts before I get to JuJu. And I want to talk about JuJu for a couple of minutes because a very interesting story from Andrew Callahan surfaced right when JuJu was let go. And I want to get into that column. I want to get into that story from Andrew in just a couple of minutes. But some final thoughts on tomorrow night's preseason game, which, yes, we will be back on Friday at 4 o'clock to react to what happened. By the way, on Friday from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m., I'll be on 98.5 The Sports Hub and NBC Sports Boston, the simulcast. I'll be on the midday show, Zoe and Beetle. I'll be on with Tim McCone on Friday, 10 to 2. Then I'll do a live podcast here at 4 o'clock as long as I can get home in time. Hopefully the traffic isn't that brutal. But a couple of finishing points before we get to Smith-Schuster, Belichick, the Andrew Callahan story. Pass rush. The joint practice yesterday, fantastic stuff. Absolutely fantastic stuff. The pass rush was consistently, from what I saw 10 to 15 snaps. I saw 3 or 4 occasions where Patriots were in the backfield. Mike Giardi reported yesterday that the pass rush looked great against the starting offensive line of Philadelphia. I want to see that pass rush tomorrow night, and I want to see if the Patriots can get pressure without blitzing a lot. They blitzed a ton against Carolina. I want to see them challenge their pass rushers without sending that extra guy or the extra 2 guys. I want to see if they can create some pass rush without having to blitz. That'll be critical. Can you get into that backfield without sending extra guys? The Patriots blitzed last year an awful lot. They were like top 5 or 6 in blitz rate last year. That first preseason game, they were first in the NFL. In all of the preseason games, all the teams that played, all 32 of them, the team that was at the tippity top that blitzed the most in the first preseason game were the Patriots. And maybe that's DeMarcus Covington working on things, right? Maybe he's working on different looks. He's working on different blitzes. He wants to make sure that everybody's on the same page. But I want to see if this pass rush can get home consistently without having to devote extra bodies to that pass rush. What's the safety rotation? Jonathan Jones, Marcus Jones, if they're both out, which is what I would expect. What's that safety rotation look like? Jalen Hawkins has been back there with Kyle Duggar. How much will we see Hawkins tomorrow night? Will they try to throw different bodies? Marte Mapu still not healthy. Story of his career so far. Zappy, Milton, what's the snap count? Does Milton play more than Zappy? Does Zappy play more than Milton? How does that shake out? The amount that, Zappy played last week to me was mind-numbing. Do we see that again tomorrow night? Does Zappy get 2 quarters tomorrow night? I hope not. I hope we see more of Maye and Milton tomorrow night. Work on developing the young guys. And finally, do we see any signs of improvement? Even if it's incremental. Will we see any of those signs of improvement? I hope so. I hope the offensive line looks like they're taking a step forward from what we saw yesterday. I hope Drake Maye gets that opportunity against the ones with the ones, and he shows a couple of flashes. Jalen Polk gets some more snaps with the starting unit. And I hope that we're talking on Friday about improving. Even if it's incremental, if it's baby steps. All right, let's get to JuJu and Bill Belichick in this report from Andrew Callahan. Andrew Callahan's one of the best around here. I trust his work. I think he's very good at what he does. I believe he spoke to sources. I trust the fact that he has sources. But I also believe as soon as JuJu Smith-Schuster was cut, some of these sources started to serve agendas. They started getting their side of the story out. Here was Callahan on JuJu and Bill Belichick. Quote, in the lead up to free agency, the Pats had been split internally on whether to retain Myers. Talking about, obviously, Jacoby. Sources believe, they don't know. Sources believe, important word, front office decision makers sold Belichick on Smith-Schuster's yak ability over what they had in Myers. That, again, served as a surprise to outsiders, considering the Patriots were not connected to Smith-Schuster in 2022 when he had also been a free agent. They also had Myers under contract in 2022. Bill was never a JuJu guy, one source said. One source. Again, important. I've got a question for you. If you're watching this podcast and you are obviously a Patriots fan, if you're not a Patriots fan, you are aware of the Patriots, you are aware of Bill Belichick's reputation. Does Belichick strike you as impressionable? Does Belichick strike you as the kind of person who would be talked into doing something? Let's not forget, Belichick wanted full autonomy, even at the very end. He wanted it here in New England until the bitter end. So does he really strike you as somebody who would be impressionable? Not to me. Belichick seems to me be somebody that is very committed to his ideas, his philosophies, very committed to the autonomy that he had here. He doesn't really strike me as somebody who would get talked into moving away from Jacoby Myers and moving towards JuJu. Here's another question for you. Do you believe that Bill Belichick, from what we know, throughout his 24-year career here in New England, does Bill Belichick strike you as somebody who would pay $16 million guaranteed to JuJu Smith-Schuster if he wasn't a JuJu guy? I find it hard to believe. I find it hard to believe that Belichick would hand JuJu $16 million guaranteed, but not really like the player. Belichick strike you as that guy that's going to pay millions upon millions upon millions of dollars of guaranteed money to somebody he doesn't like? Does he seem like that guy? Did he ever seem like that guy? through his almost quarter of a century here in New England. Not to me. Not to my eyes. Belichick never struck me as a guy who would be willing to give guaranteed money, $16 million guaranteed, to a player that he didn't like. No way, no how. To me, Belichick looked at players, especially guys that he didn't like. He would look at a player and say they are replaceable, right? They're replaceable. I don't have to give $16 million guaranteed to JuJu Smith-Schuster. We can go out there and get another receiver. He doesn't really strike me as the guy that's impressionable. He doesn't strike me as the guy that's going to give $16 million guaranteed to a player he doesn't like. So I have a hard time with that. Here's something else I would say. Belichick, he had the final decision. So no matter how much we want to maybe look at revisionist history, Belichick had the final call. If Jakobi Meyers was somebody that Belichick wanted, Jakobi Meyers would be here. If Belichick was a big fan of Meyers and wanted him on the football team, he would have been on the football team. Let's not forget, Meyers said that they were $1 million short. So if there was this, oh, I'm not sure if we want Jakobi back, then why were they only $1 million short on the deal? Why were they negotiating? If this was a front office tug of war and Belichick was talked into JuJu, then why even have those conversations with Jakobi Meyers? Why even get that close with Meyers? Why wouldn't you just walk away from the player? So some of this stuff just doesn't add up. Belichick had the final decision. If he wanted Jakobi Meyers to be a Patriot, Jakobi Meyers would have been a Patriot, folks. And I don't care how these sources are trying to put lipstick on the pig after the fact. That's the truth. If Belichick wanted you here, you were here. He was the head coach. He was the final shot caller on personnel. It's simple. Jakobi Meyers wasn't here. Bill didn't want him here. JuJu was here. Bill wanted him here. Oh, Bill was talked into it. I feel like that's just damage control. I feel like this is trying to make Bill Belichick's, final days look a little bit better. When we talk about the offensive side, again, nobody ever doubts Belichick's ability on the defensive side. One of the greatest defensive minds that football has ever seen, maybe the greatest defensive mind that the game has ever seen. Evaluated defensive talent for the most part very well at a very, very high level. All the issues were offense. And to me, this is like damage control. Next week, we'll get a story that Bill didn't really like Devontae Parker. Like, he was here. He was making the decisions. Parker was here. JuJu was here. That's on Bill. I don't think people would talk Bill Belichick into paying that guaranteed money. I don't think people would talk Bill Belichick into making a trade for Devontae Parker. Those moves were made because Bill was fine with those moves being made. And Bill made those moves. That's how I feel. And I think these sources that spoke to Andrew, again, I believe Andrew Callahan. I think he's a great reporter, and I believe he spoke to these people. I think the people that were speaking to Andrew are trying to paint Bill Belichick in a fantastic light and trying to take away some of the responsibility and trying to move that. That's what I think. And really, it doesn't make it any better, does it? I mean, the fact is that you brought JuJu in because of swinging and missing in the draft at wide receiver. Not once, but twice, right? Bringing in Devontae Parker and really missing on that evaluation. Deciding not to pay DeAndre Hopkins a very reasonable contract last offseason. Not getting ahead at tight end, which made you pay for Hunter Henry and JuJu Smith, and then JuJu Smith doesn't work out. The decisions you made with the offensive staff. We know all of this. You can't rewrite history. It's what happened. And so I'm not buying into this story of, oh, Bill was just talked into it, man. He was never a JuJu guy. He next thing I'll find out is he didn't want JuJu here. He was against JuJu being here. No, guy had the final call. And the reason why you were stuck with bringing JuJu in is because you made those decisions. You made those draft decisions. You made the decision on Jacoby Myers. You made the decision on DeAndre Hopkins. You made the decision on Parker. All of that led to the JuJu decision, which was a bad decision after many other bad decisions. Just accept it, man. It is what it is. It happened. All right. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Again, that's how we beat the algorithm. Liking and commenting, those are vital. It takes a second to do either of those. And all you got to do is just swing by and say, hey, Nick, love the pod. You don't have to go back and forth. Maybe you disagree with me. Maybe you think Belichick was talked into JuJu. Throw it in a comment. Maybe you agree with me. Throw it in a comment. Maybe you just want to say hi. Throw it in a comment. Like, comment, and subscribe. Rate and review. You find beautiful people over at Spotify and Apple Pods. I appreciate you. Everybody enjoy the game tomorrow night. Again, on Friday, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., I'll be on 98.5 and NBC Sports Boston, Zoe and Beetle, along with Tim McCone. And I'll be back here on YouTube at 4 o'clock on Friday to review what we see tomorrow night. Until then, be well. It's the Nick Cattle Show.